They took the human as a captive. Not knowing he would become there, the human had not planned to be taken. He had been mapping radiation echoes near a quiet star, floating alone in his small survey craft, following instructions sent months ago from Earth. The mission was boring by most standards, and that suited him fine. No danger, no rush, just long hours of watching numbers change slowly and recording them for people he would probably never meet. When the alien vessel appeared, it did not announce itself in any way the human recognized. One moment, the space outside his window was empty. The next, something vast and curved blocked the stars, its surface patterned like overlapping glass scales that bent light strangely. The human froze, fingers hovering above the console. Before he could send a message, before he could even decide whether to flee, his ship lost power. Not exploded, not damaged, just quiet. Lights dimmed. Systems went dark one by one, as if someone was politely turning them off. He exhaled slowly. "Well," he muttered to himself, "that's new." Moments later, a controlled pull guided his powerless craft toward an opening in the massive vessel. There was no shaking, no alarms screaming. It felt less like being captured and more like being parked. When the human was finally removed from his ship, it was done with care. Soft fields held him upright. The air around him adjusted until his lungs felt normal. He noticed all of this even through the stress, and that alone surprised him. He was brought into a wide chamber filled with tall figures. They were not frightening in the way humans often imagined aliens to be. No claws, no dripping teeth, no glowing red eyes. They were tall and thin, with long limbs and layered skin that shifted colors slowly, like deep water catching light. Their faces were flat and unreadable, their eyes dark and reflective. They stared at him. The human stared back. "This is not in the mission plan," he said quietly, mostly to hear his own voice. None of the aliens reacted. Data passed between them in pulses of light and sound the human could not understand. He could tell, though, that they were confused. Their attention kept returning to him, then drifting away, then returning again, as if he were a problem that refused to fit into any existing category. Eventually, he was guided to a room that could only be described as a cell, though it lacked the harshness the word suggested. Smooth walls, gentle light. A resting platform shaped roughly like a human bed, no visible restraints. The field holding him faded and he stood on his own. The door sealed without a sound. The human waited. He had learned long ago that panic wasted energy. Right now, energy was something he might need later. Hours passed, or maybe less. Time felt strange without familiar markers. The lights shifted slightly to suggest rest periods, though whether that was meant for him or for the aliens, he did not know. Eventually, the door opened. 3 aliens entered, moving with careful precision. Between them floated a small device humming softly. The human sat up straighter. One of the aliens stepped forward. The device emitted a series of tones, then adjusted. "Human biological unit," a calm voice said in broken but understandable English. "You are contained, you are not harmed, you will comply." The human blinked. "Well," he said after a moment, "that's better than most first meetings." The aliens paused. "You are designated captive," the voice continued. "State your purpose within coalition-restricted space." "I was doing my job," the human replied simply. "I map stars that no one cares about yet." There was a long pause. The aliens exchanged silent signals. "Your explanation is statistically improbable," the voice said. The human shrugged. "That's fair." They asked more questions about his ship, his species, his government, his technology. He answered honestly. When he did not know something, he said so. What confused the aliens most was not his answers, but his tone. He did not beg. He did not threaten. He did not lie as far as they could tell. He spoke like someone filling out paperwork. Eventually, one of them asked, "Why are you calm?" The human considered this. "Because freaking out won't help," he said. "And because you haven't hurt me, yet." That answer caused another pause. After that, the interrogations became less frequent. The aliens seemed to agree that he posed no immediate threat. His technology was primitive by their standards. His body was fragile. His species was unknown but clearly not dominant. He was, in their view, insignificant. And so they left him alone. The human adapted. He learned the rhythm of the lights. He tested the walls, not to escape, but to understand. He exercised lightly to keep his body from stiffening. He replayed old memories in his head, not to torture himself, but to stay sharp. When the door opened again, days later, he greeted the aliens with a nod. "Back already?" he said. I was starting to think you'd forgotten me. One of them tilted its head slightly. You display unusual psychological stability, the translator said. The human smiled faintly. You should see us during tax season. This time, during the questioning, the human began to ask things as well. How old is this ship? Others answered accidentally, correcting one another when details did not match. The human noticed. He did not comment, he simply remembered. Over time, a pattern formed. The aliens followed strict rules, extremely strict rules. Every action was defined by protocol. Every decision required approval from multiple levels of authority. Even small changes caused visible discomfort among them. The human found this strange. His own species loved rules, but they also loved breaking them when survival demanded it. During one session, the human pointed at a symbol displayed on a floating screen. That energy flow pattern, he said, doesn't make sense. The alien stiffened. It is optimal, one of them replied immediately. Maybe on paper, the human said carefully. But you're losing a lot of output there. You could reroute through a secondary loop and reduce stress on the system. Silence. That configuration is not approved, the alien said. The human nodded. Okay, just thought I'd mention it. After that, the questions stopped abruptly and he was returned to his room. He assumed he had made a mistake. But the next time the door opened, only one alien entered. This one moved more slowly. Its skin shifted colors more often, betraying something like uncertainty. You will repeat your previous statement, the translator said. About the energy loop, the human asked. Yes, so he did, slowly, simply, no insults, no claims of superiority, just observation and suggestion. The alien listened. Then it left without another word. The human leaned back against the wall. Huh, he said quietly. That went somewhere. Days passed. Small changes appeared in his environment. The lights became steadier. The air felt more consistent. His meals, yes, they were feeding him now, became better matched to his needs. Someone was listening. The human never tried to escape. He never demanded release. He simply existed, observed, and responded when asked. To the coalition, he remained a captive. But among a few individuals, a new thought began to form. This human was not dangerous. He was useful. The human noticed the change before anyone told him about it. At first, it was small things. The door opened more often, but not always for questions. Sometimes an alien would enter, adjust something in the room, and leave without a word. Other times, the human would find new objects waiting for him after a rest cycle. A softer sleeping surface, a light that responded when he moved his hand, a nutrient drink that tasted less like metal and more like something almost pleasant. He did not comment on these changes. He understood that pointing them out might make whoever was responsible nervous. Instead, he accepted them quietly, as if this level of care had always been normal. That, more than anything else, seemed to unsettle the coalition. When the next interrogation began, it felt different. The room was larger. The lights were brighter. 5 aliens were present instead of 3, and they stood farther away from him, forming a loose circle. You will answer clearly, the translator said. Your previous statements have caused internal review, the human nodded. All right. They asked him again about the energy system he had mentioned earlier. This time they wanted details, not accusations, not corrections, details. He explained in the same way he always did, slow, simple, and careful. He used his hands to draw shapes in the air. He compared their systems to things from Earth, water pipes, traffic flow, heat escaping through windows. He avoided technical words when he could, replacing them with ideas that were easier to picture. The aliens listened in silence. When he finished, one of them asked, "Why does your species design systems that accept failure?" The human thought about that. Because failure happens whether you plan for it or not, he said. If you don't accept it, it breaks everything when it shows up. The answer did not satisfy them. Failure is inefficiency, another alien said. Failure is information, the human replied. It tells you what not to do next time. That statement was recorded. After that session, the human was no longer questioned daily. Instead, he was visited. One alien in particular began appearing more often. It was the same one who had returned after his energy suggestion. The translator identified it as a systems analyst, though the human suspected the title meant something broader. The analyst did not always ask questions. Sometimes it simply stood there, watching the human work through simple puzzles the coalition provided to test his cognition. Other times, it would place a problem on the display and wait. One day, the problem involved population movement within a large habitat ring. The coalition had designed strict movement schedules to avoid congestion. According to their data, the system was optimal. According to reality, people were unhappy, stressed, and often late. The humans studied the data for a long time. "You're treating people like cargo," he said finally. The analyst stiffened. "Explain." "You assume they'll move when told in the exact way you expect," the human said. "But living beings don't work like that. They stop to talk. They change their minds. They help each other. Your system doesn't allow for any of that." "Order requires compliance," the analyst said. "Order requires trust," the human replied. "And trust needs flexibility." He suggested something simple, not a full redesign, just wider timing windows, a few alternate routes, areas where movement could slow without causing backups. The analyst took the information and left. Days later, the problem appeared again on the display. This time, the data showed improvement. The human smiled to himself. Word spread quietly. Other analysts began requesting time with the human, not officially. Always framed as further evaluation or behavioral analysis. But the questions were no longer about him. They were about them. Why does your species allow individuals to question leadership? But arguing is how we test ideas. Bad ones break, good ones survive. That process is inefficient, an alien said. So is repeating mistakes, the human replied. Not all of them agreed. Some left sessions visibly disturbed. A few never returned, but enough did. One cycle, the analyst stayed longer than usual. "There is concern," it said. "Your influence is increasing." The human raised an eyebrow. "I'm still locked in a room." "Influence does not require movement," the analyst replied. That made him laugh softly. "If that's true," the human said, "you might want to be more careful about who you lock up." The analyst did not respond. Soon after, the human was allowed limited access beyond his room, always escorted, always monitored. He was brought into observation decks, data halls, and once a massive chamber where hundreds of beings worked in silence, adjusting systems that controlled entire habitats. No one spoke to him directly, but many watched. The human walked slowly, hands behind his back like someone touring a museum. "These systems are beautiful," he said at one point, "but they're fragile." "Fragility is minimized through control," an escort replied. "No," the human said gently. "Fragility is hidden." "That's not the same thing." During one visit, alarms sounded not loud but sharp. Lights shifted colors. Movement paused across the chamber. "A minor systems fault," the escort said, "already being handled." The human watched the data scroll by. "You're rerouting too much load through the primary channel," he said. "That is protocol. That's how you lose the whole system if something else goes wrong," the human said. "You need a buffer." "This is not the time," the escort replied. Moments later, the alarms intensified. Still no violence, no explosions, just cascading errors. The human sighed. "May I?" he asked. The escorts hesitated. Then reluctantly they allowed him to point. He did not touch anything, he just pointed. "Shift that load there, slow that process, don't shut it down, ease it." They followed his suggestions. The alarms faded. The chamber returned to its quiet rhythm. No one spoke for a long time. After that, the human was no longer escorted by guards alone. Analysts walked with him. Engineers asked questions directly. His presence became expected. Still, officially, he remained a captive. One day, during a private session, the analyst asked, "Why do you help us?" The human thought carefully before answering. "Because you didn't hurt me," he said. "Because you listen, and because fixing things is kind of what humans do." "That is not a sufficient survival strategy," the analyst said. The human smiled. "It's worked so far." The coalition began changing, slowly and quietly. Protocols gained exceptions. Systems gained redundancy. Decision-making included discussion, not just data. None of this was announced, but everyone felt it. And somewhere deep in the coalition's vast structure, an uncomfortable question began forming. If one human could do this, the change became impossible to ignore. It did not arrive suddenly, with announcements or formal declarations. It arrived the way pressure builds in sealed systems, quietly, steadily, until everyone could feel it even if no one spoke about it. The human was no longer taken to places as a test subject. He was taken because someone had requested him. At first, those requests were rare and carefully hidden behind neutral language. Observation support, cognitive comparison, external perspective. Over time, the wording changed. Consultation, Review. Assistance. The human noticed the difference, though he pretended not to. He still lived in the same room, but the door stayed open longer now. Sometimes it did not close at all. Aliens passed by without stopping, no longer surprised to see him standing there, watching the endless movement of the station beyond. One cycle, the analyst arrived with visible tension in its posture. Its skin shifted colors faster than usual. "There is a situation," it said. The human leaned against the wall. "There always is. This one involves multiple habitats," the analyst continued. "Resource distribution projections are failing." The human straightened. "Failing how? Predictions are correct, outcomes are not." The human nodded slowly. "Then you're missing variables." The analyst hesitated. "You say this often." "Because it's often true," the human replied. "You measure systems, you don't measure people." The analyst guided him into a large chamber filled with floating displays. Data streamed in layered patterns, beautiful and overwhelming at the same time. The human took his time, walking slowly, letting his eyes adjust. "What's the fear?" he asked. "Fear is irrelevant," the analyst said automatically. The human stopped and looked at it. "Then you've already found your problem." That sentence followed the analyst for a long time. The issue, as the human saw it, was simple. The coalition had designed its society to remove uncertainty. Every role was defined, every outcome predicted, every resource allocated according to models refined over centuries. But now, the population was growing faster than expected. Cultural exchange between species had created behaviors the models did not account for. People were making choices that did not maximize efficiency. They were choosing comfort, curiosity, connection. The models labeled these choices as errors. The human labeled them as life. "You can't force people back into old patterns," he said, pointing at the projections. "They've already tasted something different." "Deviation creates instability," the analyst said. "No," the human replied. "Ignoring deviation does." He suggested something the coalition had never seriously considered. Adapt the models, not just update numbers. Change assumptions. Allow for emotional decision-making. Build systems that could bend without breaking. "This will reduce predictability," the analyst said. "Yes," the human said, "but it will increase survival." The suggestion was sent upward. The response took time. During that time, the human's presence became more visible. Engineers greeted him. Analysts asked his opinion before finalizing reports. Younger coalition members, those who had not yet fully settled into rigid thinking, began to watch him closely. Some even tried to imitate him. They asked questions. They debated. They disagreed openly. Older members noticed. Some were uncomfortable. A few were openly hostile. "This human introduces disorder," one high-level coordinator stated during a closed session. "His methods undermine unity," another replied. "His methods prevent collapse." The debate did not resolve. Then the crisis arrived. It was not dramatic. No alarms echoed through the station. No lights flashed urgently. Instead, a message spread quietly through internal channels. A major habitat was failing, not structurally, but socially. Work cycles were being abandoned. Coordination had broken down. Resource queues were growing chaotic. The people inside were not in danger yet, but the system was unraveling. Coalition protocol dictated isolation. Lock down the habitat. Restore order through control. The human read the report in silence. "That won't work," he said finally. The analyst looked at him. "It is the approved response." "It will make things worse," the human said. "You'll turn frustration into resentment." "What is your alternative?" the analyst asked. The human hesitated. "I want to talk to them." That request traveled farther than any of his previous suggestions. Permission was debated fiercely. Allowing a captive, an outsider, a single human, to address an entire habitat went against everything the coalition believed about authority. In the end, desperation outweighed tradition. The human was escorted to a communication chamber. He stood alone before a vast projection field, his image ready to be transmitted across the habitat. "No scripts," the analyst warned. "No deviation from approved topics." The human smiled faintly. "I don't do scripts." The connection opened. Thousands of faces appeared, layered across the projection, different species, different shapes, all looking tired, confused, and tense. The human took a breath. "I'm not here to tell you what to do," he said. His voice was calm, unforced. "I'm here because your system stopped listening to you." The reaction was immediate. Attention sharpened. You were promised order, he continued. But order without understanding feels like a cage. I know, I've been in one, murmurs spread. You don't need more rules, the human said. You need room to breathe, and the people above you need to hear what's actually happening down here. He did not assign blame. He did not criticize the coalition openly. He spoke about stress, about change, about how systems built for one world struggled when the world evolved. I can't fix this for you, he said, but I can help you explain it. When the transmission ended, silence filled the chamber. The analyst stared at him. That was not approved language, it said. No, the human replied, but it was necessary. The results came faster than anyone expected. Tensions eased, not completely, but enough. People returned to work not because they were ordered to, but because they felt heard. The coalition adjusted protocols, cautiously at first, then more confidently. The habitat stabilized, and the coalition changed its classification of the human. He was no longer labeled simply as captive. He was labeled anomaly of influence. The human laughed when he heard that. Still not guessed, huh, he said. Terminology lags behind reality, the analyst replied. More requests came in after that, not just for problem solving, but for explanation, training, perspective. The human spent long hours talking, listening, translating human ideas into concepts the coalition could understand. He explained failure as feedback, disagreement as strength, adaptation as survival. He never claimed humans were superior. He claimed they were stubborn. And somehow that mattered. Late one cycle, as the human stood watching the stars through a transparent panel, the analyst joined him. There is concern, it said quietly. Let me guess, the human replied. I'm changing things? Yes, he nodded. Change can be scary. The analyst paused. What if we cannot return to what we were? The human looked at the stars. Then you're doing it right, he said. Behind them, the coalition continued to adjust, slowly, carefully, guided not by conquest or force, but by a single unexpected truth. They had taken a human to study weakness. By the time the coalition realized how much had changed, it was already too late to undo it. Not because anything was broken, not because the human had taken control, but because the systems that once depended on silence and strict obedience were now filled with questions. And questions, once allowed, did not disappear easily. The human's days no longer followed any clear pattern. Some cycles he was called to review data from distant habitats. Other times he spent hours simply listening to analysts argue with one another, stepping in only when their logic ran in circles. He was not the loudest voice in the room. Often he was the quietest, but when he spoke, people listened. He still lived in the same quarters, though no one called them a cell anymore. The door rarely closed. Sometimes it stayed open through entire rest cycles, as if the idea of locking him in had simply slipped from everyone's mind. One day, as the human adjusted a display showing long-term population trends, he noticed something strange. You're not just changing systems, he said slowly. You're changing how you teach. The analyst beside him shifted its stance. Clarify. These newer models, the human said, pointing, they're not just instructions, they explain why choices are made. That's new. The analyst considered this. Understanding improves compliance. The human smiled. Understanding improves cooperation. The difference mattered. Across the coalition, training programs were being rewritten. Instead of memorizing protocols, new members were encouraged to understand outcomes. Instead of punishing deviation immediately, supervisors were taught to ask why it happened. Mistakes were still corrected. But they were no longer treated as failures of loyalty. This shift did not please everyone. A group of high-ranking coordinators began meeting without inviting analysts who had worked closely with the human. They spoke in careful language, but their concern was clear. The human is a destabilizing factor, one said. Our identity is changing. Another replied, our identity was static. That is the problem. They reviewed reports showing improved efficiency, higher satisfaction, lower long-term risk. The data supported the changes. But data was not what troubled them. Control was. The human felt the tension even before it reached him directly. Conversations became quieter when he entered certain rooms. Some requests were delayed. A few were denied without explanation. One cycle, the analyst came to him later than usual. There is resistance, it said. The human nodded. There always is. They believe you are becoming essential, the analyst continued. They see that as a vulnerability. The human leaned back in his chair. They're not wrong. That admission surprises me, the analyst said. It shouldn't, the human replied. If a system can't function without one part, that's a bad design, including me. The analyst was silent. I don't want to be essential, the human added. I want to be temporary. That idea spread. The human began changing how he helped. Instead of offering solutions directly, he asked others to propose them. Instead of correcting mistakes, he guided people toward finding the problems themselves. At first, this slowed things down. Some grew frustrated. Then something unexpected happened. They started solving problems without him. The analyst noticed first. They no longer request you for initial review, it said. The human smiled. Good, but they still seek your confirmation. That'll fade too, he said. Give it time. Time was something the coalition had plenty of. Then came the decision. The human was summoned to a chamber he had never seen before. It was vast and quiet, with no visible displays, only a circle of elevated platforms. The highest-ranking members of the coalition were present. No guards stood nearby. You have been classified as more than a captive, one of them said, yet not fully as an equal, the human nodded. Fair. You have altered our systems, our training, and our internal culture, another said, without authority. I never asked for authority, the human replied. You asked for help. That is the concern, a third voice said. Your influence exceeds your status. The human looked around the chamber. Then maybe it's my status that's wrong. Silence followed. What do you propose? One asked. The human took a breath. Let me go, he said. The words rippled through the room. Explain, the first speaker said carefully. If I stay, the human continued, I become a symbol, a crutch, something you rely on instead of yourselves. That's not healthy for you or for me. You would leave all progress unfinished? Another asked. The human shook his head. No, you'll finish it. You already are. They debated for a long time, not angrily, thoughtfully. The human waited, hands folded, heart steady. Finally, the first speaker addressed him again. You were taken without understanding, it said. You were kept without trust. You are now offered neither captivity nor command. The human raised an eyebrow. That's a strange offer. You are offered choice, the speaker said. Remain as an advisor or depart freely. The human did not answer immediately. He thought of Earth, of quiet survey missions, of stars no one cared about yet. He thought of the coalition, still learning how to change. I'll stay a little longer, he said. But not as an advisor. Clarify, the speaker said. As a teacher, the human replied. Teach you how to not need me. That answer was accepted. From that cycle on, the human's role became clear. He led sessions on problem framing, not problem solving. On questioning assumptions, on preparing for failure without fearing it. He told stories of Earth, not of wars or heroes, but of mistakes, of bridges that collapsed and were rebuilt stronger, of systems that failed because no one listened to the people using them. The coalition listened and learned. Eventually, the day came when no one requested him at all. The human noticed it first, then smiled. He spent the cycle walking observation decks, watching the flow of life around him. The coalition moved differently now, less rigid. More aware, the analyst joined him at the stars once more. They no longer require you, it said. That was the goal, the human replied. There is uncertainty, the analyst admitted, about what happens next. The human looked at the endless dark beyond the station. That never goes away, he said. You just learn to live with it. The coalition prepared a ship for him, not a prison craft, not an escort, a gift. As the human boarded, members of many species gathered quietly. No ceremony, no speeches, just presence. The analyst stood closest. You changed us, it said. The human shook his head. You changed yourselves. I just asked annoying questions. The ship detached gently, drifting away from the station. As it moved into open space, the human looked back once. The coalition continued on, no longer perfect, no longer rigid, but alive in a way it had never been before. And for the first time since his capture, the human felt certain of one thing. They had not taken a prisoner. They had encountered humanity. The human's ship moved slowly away from the coalition station, its engines quiet and steady. There was no dramatic farewell, no flashing lights or official signal. Just distance growing between metal and metal, between a place that had changed him and a future that was once again unknown. He watched the station until it became a shape against the stars, then a shadow, then nothing at all. For a long time, he did nothing. He let the ship drift while its systems adjusted to open space. He checked supplies, reviewed navigation, and sent a short message toward Earth. It was not a report filled with details. It was only a simple line. Alive, learned a lot, coming home eventually. Then he leaned back and stared out at the stars. He did not feel like a hero. He felt tired. But it was the good kind of tired, the kind that came after something meaningful. What the human did not know was that the coalition was already changing again. Not because he was gone, but because he had left. In the cycles that followed his departure, the absence of his quiet presence became noticeable. Meetings felt different without his calm voice asking uncomfortable questions. Analysts caught themselves wondering what the human would say before finalizing decisions. At first, this made them uneasy. Then it made them confident. They realized they no longer needed to ask. Across the coalition, systems continued to evolve. Decision models were no longer treated as perfect truths, but as tools meant to be questioned. Training emphasized understanding instead of obedience. Younger members rose quickly, not because they followed rules best, but because they adapted fastest. Even language changed. Words once associated with weakness, uncertainty, doubt, error were now paired with learning and growth. And slowly, quietly, the story of the human spread, not as a legend, not as a myth, as a case study. He was small. And yet, the instructors would say, he changed everything. Meanwhile, the human traveled. He visited empty systems and cataloged strange stars. He repaired his ship more than once using tools that should not have worked but somehow did. He encountered silence and beauty in equal measure. He also encountered others, not humans at first. Other species, curious and cautious, drawn by faint signals and shared trade routes. Some recognized his ship design. Some recognized his face from coalition records that had quietly spread. "You are the human," they would say. He never corrected them. He spoke with them as he always had, asked questions, listened, suggested. Sometimes he stayed, sometimes he left. Wherever he went, things shifted slightly. Not dramatically, not violently, just enough. Years passed. When the human finally returned to human-controlled space, he was older, slower, and far more relaxed than when he had left. His ship looked worn but loved. His logs were full of notes that no one had asked him to collect. Earth welcomed him quietly. No celebrations, no headlines, just a debriefing room, a few tired officials, and a request to explain what had happened. He told them the truth. "They took me because they thought I was weak," he said. "They kept me because I was useful. They let me go because they learned." "That's it?" one official asked. The human smiled. "That's plenty." The report was archived. Most people forgot about it, but not all. Humanity continued as it always had. Arguing, building, breaking things and fixing them again, spreading outward not as conquerors, but as explorers, traders, and sometimes accidents waiting to happen. When humans and coalition members met again, years later, the encounter was different. There were no containment fields, no interrogations. There was recognition. Coalition representatives greeted humans as equals, not because they feared them, but because they understood them. They understood that humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and stubbornly cooperative when it mattered. They understood that humans did not need to dominate to influence. They only needed to be present. The human who had once been a captive watched one such meeting from a distance, sitting in a quiet station cafe. He listened as a young coalition analyst explained a new system design to a human engineer. The engineer frowned, asked questions, suggested changes. The analyst did not resist. They debated, they laughed. The human smiled into his drink. Later, the analyst noticed him. "You," it said, approaching slowly. "You are the one." The human nodded. "I was." "You never told us what you became after you left," the analyst said. The human thought about that. "A traveler," he said. "A teacher sometimes, mostly just human." The analyst tilted its head. "Your species is difficult to define." "That's fair," the human replied. "We have trouble defining ourselves." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the station move around them. "You were taken as a captive," the analyst said. "Our records still reflect that." The human shrugged. "Records are slow." "What would you have us change it to?" the analyst asked. The human considered. "First contact," he said finally. "The real kind." The analyst processed that, then nodded. As the human left the cafe, he passed humans and aliens working together, arguing gently over designs, sharing food, adjusting plans. No one bowed, no one saluted, no one needed to. Humanity had not arrived with fleets or force. It had arrived with questions, mistakes, and the strange ability to keep going even when nothing made sense. And somewhere deep in the coalition's shared memory, a lesson remained clear. They had taken the human as a captive,